Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to our Kathy's Corner for today, July 2023. And it's a thrill to welcome you all to this regular series of programs that focus on the flow of your project from those tubs of precious treasures that have been passed to you that you have collected in your family with an intent to build them as part of your family history onto the tales that really matter, that tell the story of your family, the elements that mattered to your collected family, to yourself. This is so core to what we're building here in our little post-Ponga community. And Kathy Stone has been a treasure to us as Ponga and has graciously carried that forward into this post-Ponga community. So with that, I'm delighted to welcome Kathy Stone of Calgary Photo Solutions, who is our special guest today, and so many of you gathered here this afternoon. Go ahead, please, Kathy.
I will. I'm just about to.
Would
I
you like
tried.
me to do
I
the
shared my
little
screen a
housekeeping
minute
that I
ago.
do? Would you like me to do the housekeeping that I do
Sure.
about sort of mechanics here?
Yes,
It
but I'll
dawned on
figure
me.
out why suddenly I can't share my screen anymore.
Sure, and I won't even do it with screen sharing. So some of the things that I know for many of you, you're comfortable doing these kinds of programs using Zoom. So that makes us a bit of an evangelist on the world of Google. Seems odd, but Google Meet has gone through quite a transformation in the last couple of years of Zoom dominance. And so welcome back. Some of the kinds of things you'll expect to see, like a microphone button and a camera button down at the bottom, you can turn those on or off so that we can see your smiling faces or not, depending on how you feel about it. The microphone button, I can't control your microphone button, so if you're ready to speak, you have to hit that yourself. I can't do that for you. Closed captioning is kind of cool. It really will do live captioning if that's easier to read. You can add your own smileys. I'm following the buttons down at the bottom for you. The presents button is what Kathy is working through to be able to present. Raising your hand is a way to interrupt, to raise a hand. You can also add comments in a comment button. I'll show you in a moment. The little kebab icon, who knew that had a name? The 3-button icon lets you go in to play with visual effects and things like that. It's where you would probably troubleshoot your microphone if you needed to, things like that. Info, what is info? Oh, that just tells you how you got here, I guess. People lets you see who else is here. Chat, guess what? That's chat. The key thing to know there is, unlike Zoom, there's no one-on-one chatting. So if you think you're speaking to one person and not everybody else, you're not. And other activities, we're not doing that. And the rest is I think, the key things that you need to know. Was that enough of a distraction?
Yep, I think I'm ready.
Good. All right, then. Go ahead, please, Kathy.
Okay. Mine says it's preparing me to share my screen, but
We see your logo. It's coming.
That's not what we're trying to share. Okay.
It was presenting a moment ago. Could it be which monitor or something like that?
That could be. Let's try this. Okay. Share.
There we go.
Oh, that looks good, eh? Okay. So just give me a second here. Okay, well, let's just get going. I'm just trying to figure out if I've gone too far now. I've got to go back. There. So I wanted to start off today. We're going to talk about scanning, which is, or digitizing rather. I've got to stop saying that because it's, when I first started, scanning was kind of the word we used for almost everything. And then digitizing is now taking over as there's more and more things that doesn't encompass just scanning. But I wanted to start off with a quote from Barbara Tien. A print captures a moment in time on a physical piece of paper. Digitizing brings images to life. You can tell the stories. Add other information to the photo, a photo of something or another photo. You could add another photo of something, or you can add to a story. You can add almost anything to your photo once it's digitized. And when Barbara was talking last week about, okay, this is going to mess me up today. Okay. When we were talking last week about, just 1 second. Okay. Sorry,
It's
I got
okay.
too many screens going right now. I'm showing you all my things I'm trying to talk about. Okay. Nope, now you can't see what I'm doing here.
While you work that out, let me explain one important tip that we also like to make about using Google Meet is it can be very helpful to pull the tab out if you're viewing it in a tab so that you don't lose it, because you can lose it among many open tabs. Was that helpful?
Yes. Okay, from current slide, go. Start. No, I'm in the wrong thing here. Sorry.
That's okay.
This is the problem with 2 screens. Okay, so we're just going to blunder our way through here. It won't show me my notes, but that's okay. I'll just make it up as I go. So digitizing, you can see my screen now, right? We're all good?
Yep.
Okay, so we started, I'm going to just go right back to the first one. We're going to talk about digitizing. We're at step 4 of the 8-step process: scanning, photographing, converting, taking all the analog to digital. Of all those 8 steps, digitizing is the only one that's mandatory. And I'll tell you why. Digitizing allows for creating a backup of all those important things. They're physically, of all those physical things, they become safe from fire, floods, hurricanes, and other disasters. Disasters aside, things are deteriorating, and digitizing them preserves them as they are. Some things are deteriorating faster than others. Digitizing everything is also very space saving. You can cut down from all those piles of photos and boxes of photos, and digitizing will take up a lot less space. Becomes easier to share. If everything is digitized, it's a lot easier to share with others. Digitizing is, I think, most important for us. It's the key to telling the stories and how we can get across everything behind the pictures and the objects. It's also necessary to take advantage of technology. There's my other picture. So there's an example of less space. More than a foot's worth of physical albums there. Those are all photo albums. Fits into about that much space of digital albums. And so in order to use all the things Barb talked about last week, we have to digitize. And what we're going to look at today, digitizing could take days to cover. We're going to stay on a higher level and look at options, decision factors, the type of equipment that is needed for digitizing different types of stuff, not so that you learn how to operate all this equipment, but rather so that you have an idea what method might work best for you and how to get your things digitized. So in terms of options, first option is to hire someone to do it. And in my opinion, not just because my background is a photo manager, if there's any part of this process that is easier and will cost you less than to hire someone else, it's this digitizing part, because it's very straightforward. Hiring someone to organize your photos is quite expensive because a lot of guesswork goes into it. But digitizing, once you present the material, it's straightforward for a professional to do that. Or do it yourself. That's the other option. I couldn't really think of any others. That's sort of the main two anyway. There's many factors to think about when you decide how you want to do this. And you may do some yourself, and you may contract out other stuff. Right now, I am contracting out scanning of all my negatives, and I'll talk about why negatives are being scanned in a bit, versus I'm going to scan my own kids' artwork, because the negatives are cheaper per item, are cheaper to scan than flatbed scanning with the company I'm using. And I have the equipment to do the flatbed scanning, so I will do it myself to save some money. Well, the factors is time. Partly why I'm getting my negative scanned is because it would take too long to do it myself. It takes a long time. Scanning does take time. The equipment you need. Some people, I see a lot of people in a photo managing group I belong to, of the general public who are always, well, what do I need to do this? What equipment do I need? So we'll talk about that, and that can help you make your decision about whether you want to do it yourself or contract out. Your skill level. Some of the things are very easy to use. Some are a little more tricky and might involve learning time and need and skills that you don't currently possess. Also, a factor is always cost. And we're going to talk about the scale of okay, good, better, and best. And I think that's really something to consider in terms of cost. And in terms of my my negatives in my digital artwork, cost is a big factor for me in that sense over the time it'll take me to do it. And then what kind of stuff are you trying to digitize is also important, because there's a wide range, and we'll talk more about all the different things that there are to digitize, and that's going to be a factor as well. Whatever you decide, there are many options to digitize things, particularly your photos. And a couple quotes here. One, again, a favorite quote of mine. These are things I've written down over the time I've known Barb. Don't let perfection be the enemy of the good. It's important to keep in mind what your end goal is. And that will help you decide what quality you want and how much you want to invest in that. Sharing digitized stuff with your family is different than preparing a collection to be given for a museum or an archive. It's a fact. And it's a scale. It's not this way or good or bad. It's more of a scale of a sliding scale of from good to bad, from good, okay, to the best. And sometimes there are only going to be a couple options, and sometimes there'll be a whole bunch. But keep in mind the factors that we talked about previously, because they may require some research on your part. And the other one is done is better than perfect. So this is the scale we're going to talk about, from okay, good, better, and best. And like I said, some things there will only be okay or best. Some things there might only be a better and a best way to do that. But it's something you need to think about, is how important is the result versus just getting it done. And we talk a lot about getting to the good part. And again, all this digitizing we're talking about doesn't have to all be done at once either. You can have time. You can do it like as we've talked about before, on a project basis. You can take all your old film reels, the old home movies, and have them all digitized and start with a project with the videos. It's up to you. You don't have to. A professional will digitize everything before we get started on the next part, but that's not what we're talking about here. That's not what you need to do. And please stop me anytime. I can't see anything but my own screen anymore. So if you have questions, someone will have to say, Kathy, I have a question, and ask me, or slow down, I don't know what you're talking about. So there's elements that are important with any kind of digitizing. Probably many more than this that I came up with, but it's good to consider consider what you want, what's important to you, whether you're going to do the work yourself or hire someone else to do it. One important factor is format. What format do you want things digitized in? Some of that depends on what it is you're digitizing. And there's all sorts of formats now. Scanning typically is done as pings, not so much in the photo world. Pings aren't really used that much, but JPEGs, TIFF files, RAW files. And Barb and I had a discussion the other day, and I'm waiting to hear back from my Apple expert friend, as whether I imagine if you scan with your Apple phone, you could scan as an HEIC. And then
yes,
sorry,
yeah. Yes, so that's definitely
another possible format. Yeah. And then with audio, videos, are you converting them to MP4, MP3? what audio visual format are you going to use? So
Right.
consider what formats. I think a lot of what's important with format is something that is usable to you in the programs you use.
It, if I may interrupt, I've
Sure.
generally taken, with respect to the digitizing step, I've always assumed that it's just as a general rule, always take the highest convenient, reasonable resolution possible. So, for example, if I can manage it and I have sufficient archiving and backup space to handle large files, I do large. So, for example, I do have an iPhone and I will record video frequently on 4K, even if I
Yeah.
only ever plan to use it as MP3.
Yeah.
And 4K, Apple exports that as a .movie file. And a .movie file is, I think, Apple specific, isn't it? Is there a 4K standard for file format that's not Apple? I don't know.
There is, and I didn't list it there, and I'd have to look it up. I can't
Yeah,
remember
I
off
don't.
my head.
But generally speaking, I can say that for any file format that you need to get it into something else, the secret is Google. You
Mm-hmm.
search and it's amazing. There's a converter out there for almost anything. Yesterday I was
Yeah.
trying to invert a file. It was black and white. I wanted it white and black.
Yeah.
And I couldn't, just got tired of finding an app that would do that. And I said, oh heck. Sure enough. I don't even remember the name of the
And
app.
again, the okay, good, better, and best comes into play in formats. So most professionals, I have RAW there because if people are camera scanning, that would be the format off the camera would be in RAW. TIFF for people using scanners, TIFF is what professionals would scan at. Again, to me, it's your choice because TIFF files, they're lossy. So if you do extensive editing, you don't lose any quality, which is JPEG. There's supposed to be quality lost if you edit. So if you're going to do a ton of edit, for example, if I'm scanning old photos that need reconstruction, where I have to fix frames, remove water damage, remove the bird poop, all that stuff, I'll scan them as TIFF so I have a bigger file to work with. But if I'm just scanning the plain old pictures and all we're going to do is do a little color correction and hopefully a little sharpening on them, I'll scan them as JPEGs because the storage space required is very different between a TIFF and a RAW and a JPEG. Like your JPEGs or TIFF is probably 4 or 5 times as large as a JPEG. So again, is a JPEG good enough for your purposes or do you need a TIFF? Those are the kind of decisions that you need to think about. DPI is important in scanning. The lowest we really recommend is 300 DPI, which would fit in the category of okay to good. 4800 is more applies to slides and negatives. 600 is considered industry standard for scanning photos and things. And what you want to keep in mind there is what are you going to do with the photo in the end? Because the higher the DPI, and this goes for format, if you're scanning as a TIFFs with flatbed scanner or a high-speed scanner, it takes longer. It takes longer to scan it and it makes more data. Same with the DPI. If you increase the DPI, the scanning takes longer. If you reduce it, it doesn't take as long, but maybe it's not the quality you want. So that's something else to look into. So 4800 would be very unusual for a photo. 600 is good. 300 will allow you to reproduce a photo. Say you scan something and wanted to reprint it for some reason. You could reprint it at the same size. If you go up to 600, you can probably enlarge it a bit. You'd have to do a higher DPI if you want to like make if you're planning on making a wallpaper out of it, for example. One thing that is really important, no matter what you're doing, this is my pet peeve. I watched a little video about PhotoMine, which is a photo app for scanning with your phone. And then in the demonstration, they were showing how fast PhotoMine works, which I'm not disputing. I think it does. Probably a good app. But in their demo film, nobody cleaned the media they were scanning. Nobody cleaned the lens on the camera. The people weren't wearing gloves, and there was no indication they'd washed their hands, and no indication the work surface was clean. Dust is your enemy, and glitter is evil. You don't want any of that near any kind of scanning equipment or on anything you're trying to scan, because you will not even get okay, you're going to get a big mess. And that means either a ton of editing when you're done or rescanning. So everything should be clean. These are just a random things. You'd kind of like the final product to be in the correct orientation. Not a big deal. You can always rotate stuff. But if I'm hiring someone to scan my stuff for me, I want it all back the right way up. Are you doing the equipment you're using? Can you do color enhancing during scanning? Or if it's black and white, can you do light enhancing during the scanning? The equipment has to stay stationary, which sounds weird, like your scanners aren't going to move around, but that's the advantage. If you're doing something like scanning with a phone, and that's what else they were doing in the PhotoMine video, or scanning with your camera, it needs to be mounted on a stand because you can't hold things still and at the proper angle to scan with them. So whatever you're scanning with, it needs to stay put. It shouldn't be in your hands rattling around. Post-scan editing, that's, again, that will come back to your format. Do you plan to do a lot of editing in the finals, in the end product, or are you good with what you've got? Okay. All right. Here's where the rubber meets the road. So what we have here is a range of okay to the best. So if you're scanning photos, which is one of the most common things, you can okay scan with a phone, or what I call an all-in-one scanner, which is your printer that scans and faxes and does all that stuff. That's okay. You'll get a, we talk about, Barbara and I've talked about this, is if you only have your phone to scan with your phone, it's better than nothing. And like if you're out, I was at a family reunion, I scanned a whole bunch of stuff with my phone because I didn't happen to have my scanners with me. And so those pictures, they will be the pictures I'll use because that's what I have. So it's okay. The results are okay. The quality of the scan with a phone will only be as good as the phone camera. I'll say that again. The quality of a scan with your phone is only as good as your camera. So if you've got the brand new iPhone or the brand new Samsung with the higher resolution cameras, you've got a better chance of success. I think phone scanning is going to keep moving out of the okay category and keep moving up the scale there as we get more technology develops faster, because I think that's just a matter of time. An all-in-one scanner, it's not great quality. You can usually only scan one item at a time, or if you scan a bunch of items on there, then you have to crop them all apart afterwards. And so you have to edit them afterwards. Now into scanners, regular flatbed. I don't know, can you see me pointing with my mouse? No.
No, Kathy.
Okay, so that doesn't work. In the middle of a photo at the bottom, there's a great big scanner, and then in the back is a smaller black scanner with a white, that's like a standard scanner. That's a regular old flatbed scanner. They're good. They're designed to scan photos as opposed to everything else, documents and everything else. So they'll give you a pretty good result. The next level are what we call high-speed or specialty scanners. So they're dedicated for photos. One is a high-speed, so that's the picture third from the left. That's my high-speed scanner there. So they'll scan a whole bunch of pictures all at once. It works. My best analogy is it looks like a bill changer in action. You put a stack of photos into the top there, and it runs them through the scanner and spits them out the bottom. High speeds are very fast, way faster than flatbeds. Some of the pros, they cost more, although the one I have, which sadly you can't get, they don't make anymore, it was about $3,000 in Canada, probably much less everywhere else, but maybe not, less in the States. They're not good for fragile, old, or small photos. They will scan up to an 8x10 through the automatic feed, so 5x7s. They're not good for Polaroids because of the potential to crack. So to buy a high-speed scanner, you can get one now for I think about $850 Canadian, so that's about 500 US. Epson makes a good model, but that still leaves you with stuff you can't scan in it. And I don't scan documents with that high-speed scanner because what did I say was our big enemy? Dust. So I don't want to put paper through my high-speed scanner and get dust inside. So I would scan documents and paper somewhere else. Then I mentioned an oversized scanner. So in the picture, second from the right, the thing in the front is my oversized scanner. It's a flatbed, and it will scan things up to 12 by 18. So it's ideal for large memorabilia, big old certificates, and photo albums. Usually when you're talking about specialty scanners, they'll have something called a photo selector. So I can scan an album page and then say, select the photos as well. And I can have a scan of the whole page plus individual scans of each photo on the page. And the scanner just does it itself, which is pretty good. Pretty cool. That was oversized.
Was that Epson software that does that?
Pardon me?
Was that Epson software that does that?
This was Kodak, but Epson does have a large, forget the model number, but Epson also has a large flatbed.
Yeah.
That will do that, and probably has that same software. My software was all Kodak, because several of these pieces all belong to my Kodak scanners, which I originally purchased, and they're still going strong, knock on wood. The best is what the professionals do, for not only for photos, but for negatives and slides and oversized items, is camera scanning. So what you see there, I asked a photo manager friend if they could send me a picture of their camera scanning setup, because I've done it, but I've had like my camera on a tripod. So this is using a copy stand, lighting. Lighting is important. And this, I think, is where you see the difference between using your phone, because you say, well, I could set that up with my phone. And you could. And if you're using your phone, I'd recommend a similar setup where you have lighting and everything. But the sensor on your camera is much larger than your sensor on your phone, and a much better sensor in your camera. You need a DSLR, and you need a higher end model for scanning. The other difference is the camera on the copy scan. You can move it up and down. So you can go for bigger items by moving the camera up. If you're doing that with your phone, the distance between your phone lens and the object is getting farther and farther as well, but you have no mechanism of adjusting the telescopic lens, or adjusting the field of the camera the same way you do, or the phone the same way you do on a camera. So that's sort of why it's the best thing, and that's what most pros would do. If you want to do this yourself, if you have a good DSLR camera and you know how to use it off the automatic setting, you actually know how to use the settings, camera scanning might be the thing for you, because it's quite multifunctional, and the learning curve will not be you've just got to learn like positioning, and you're going to have to buy like the copy stand and some lights and stuff if you've already got the camera and know how to use it. If you have been using a point and shoot and now use your phone, it's going to be a significant investment dollar-wise and learning-wise, because you actually do need to know how to work a camera on manual for settings. For documents, a phone or an all-in-one are good. They're okay. They're fine. Same with the regular flatbed, because that's kind of what they were designed for, was documents. A better option is a dedicated actually, that should probably be under best. A dedicated document scanner, because they were built to scan documents. And it's hard to see, but in the second picture from the left is a white object. That's my document scanner. And so it's like a high-speed scanner for documents. And I can scan them in different formats, but I can also scan them in PDF document format. And the software will run OCR character recognition on it and things like that. So those are probably the two biggest things that we encounter: documents and photos. And then we get into the tougher stuff, the negatives and slides. Now, you can still do negatives and slides on your phone. Again, same things go for doing negatives or slides with your phone. Again, make sure it's not moving. So like, don't hold it over top of things. The pictures that I scanned with my phone when I was away, where I was holding my phone, they're not great because the angle's tipped sometimes, so it's not perfect. They also make now, for both things, mobile scanners. And I used that term because I couldn't think of any, like small things. If you Google, these are probably do-it-yourself scanners. So that's the picture on the left. And they're like that. There's all sorts of different ones. If you do get one with a decent sized screen on it, because then you can actually see what you're scanning. It'll do negatives, it'll do slides. This one actually says it does film. I would not recommend scanning my precious film with one of those, but to each his own. So they'll do slides, they'll do negatives. Again, the problem with these, some of them will have a feed, so you can do more than one at a time. Sometimes all you can do is 4 at a time, because, or slides, you'll be able to put like 4 at a time through, and they'll scan them. Again, the quality will not be as good as, say, using a camera to scan with, or a specialty negative scanner. So for negatives and for slides, these are pretty well the same. In the better quality is, you can get a specialty flatbed, and that in the middle picture, that is an Epson V600, which will not only scan pictures and documents, it will scan slides and negatives, and it uses those holders you see laying in there. So it's kind of time consuming to scan them that way. There are high-speed negative scanners, and they cost a fortune. I don't even know anyone that isn't a business, like none of my professional scanner people that I know who've actually invested in them, because they're in the thousands of dollars. There is a high-speed slide scanner, which is the picture on the right, and it's essentially a camera attached to what looks like a slide projector, and you have a device to click it, so it'll automatically drop the slide in, you take the picture, spits it out, you drop the next one and go through it, so it's much faster. And you can get some of those mobile scanners that have a similar device, but again, you're not going to do 100 as fast as you would with a dedicated piece of equipment. And then of course the best is cameras, for negatives and slides. And again, you have to have some kind of a device, a holder, and with the proper holders on both the specialty scanners, like for negatives, for example, and camera scanning, you can get slide holders, additional holders to fit the scanner that will hold all sorts of different kinds of negatives. I have them for really old size negatives that were about 3x5. I've got them for 110 negatives, which are the really skinny ones. I have them to hold Viewmaster, disc cameras. You can buy all these, but again, you're adding to the cost for scanning a few things. So
can I ask a couple of questions, Kathy? Well, one's a question, one's a comment. So did I understand you to say that for like an Epson flatbed, which I have, you can get these attachments for other kinds of slides?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
It's provided it's one that will do that, one that already comes with attachments for the basics. Yeah.
Yeah.
The best place source for them is on eBay.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think the name off the top of my head, it's called Negative Solutions. But if you Google negative or slide holders on eBay, they are actually 3D printing them.
Oh, I see. I actually bought an attachment for my old Epson printer to do slides, because I thought that's what was wrong on my old Epson printer or scanner. It turns out the problem was that the slide scanning mechanism was busted on that device. So, but I did find them on eBay. That's a good point.
And the other thing with getting additional holders is you can get additional ones just for your 35mm film, and then because negative scanning on a flatbed takes a while too. It takes time just for it to process. But you can be loading the next set while you're scanning one, then unloading, put the other one in, so that can speed the process up a bit.
Right. That's a good point. And it's really just a plastic giga to fit in there.
Yeah.
Related question. Oh, thank you so much, Anne. That's perfect. The other is really just a comment, which is to say that if you have the benefit of being nearby one of the family search history centers, the LDS Church libraries, many of them, if not most of them, have some remarkable scanning
Yes.
services accessible. You can Google that from the Family Search has a wiki. As a matter of fact, I can make that accessible here for us. And our local library here in Oakland happens to be a very big one, and they have like that high-speed print scanner, which
Yes.
I discovered, as well as like microfiche readers and all kinds of things that you can just
And
come in and use. It's
a
amazing.
lot of libraries do provide that service.
And that's right, local libraries too. So
So if you
ask
want to do
around.
your own but don't want to buy equipment, that's a good place to check too.
It's certainly my plan is to go and to go ahead and check first and decide if that's good enough quality, and if not, then
Yeah.
send it out.
And
Exactly.
that's often the best way to tell is,
Yeah.
compare
Right.
your results.
Diane has a question. Go ahead, please, Diane.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to get to the chat.
That's
And
okay.
I'm on my iPad, and so I lost the screen earlier.
It's a
So
common problem with Google Meet. Did you have a question? Go ahead.
no, not yet. I'm just
You've given everyone else a chance to think of anything.
yeah. So I really liking this with the scanning options, and we have also at our genealogy library, we have a good scanner there. So
Yeah, actually, that's a great
that's
point, Diane, because of family history. I think our local family history place, I have to check for sure, may have some scanning equipment too.
yeah, and
So
it's
local genealogy societies, family history associations, places like that are good to check to see if somebody has the equipment, if you want to do the work yourself.
right. Thank you.
You're welcome. And we're getting to the end. So the another big thing is all those old media, VHS, VHS-C, Beta, Video 8, High 8, mini DVDs, and then the old films, the film reels. We had a couple different sizes. So you can do them. The film, like I said, mobile scanners, I should have put that in okay. Mobile scanners, you can scan your film with it, but I think it's scanning it frame by frame. I don't see how it, those little mobile scanners that say they can do that kind of film reel is doing like a video of it, but I could be wrong. And for both, you can get home setups. You can purchase the equipment, like say for VHS, you need a VHS player, and then you need converters and your computer. And my recommendation, I only put two things down here because I think if you were going to only have something digitized professionally, this is what I would do. I have done this. I'm not even going to, I got a converter for the VHS thing and I went, okay. And then I'm using my ancient VHS player, which is dirty. And again, what did I say about dirty? So you're going to get a bad quality. So unless you're like the people who are doing this professionally, I've used a fellow photo manager and also a business that near me. He has about 40 video, like he's got 40 of every kind of equipment, because when it doesn't work, you have to get more, you have to keep it clean. So that's where I'm thinking for the cost, you're going to get a way better quality from a professional, and the same for film. The other note about stuff like VHS in particular, and I'd probably imagine VHS-Cs as well, they're just a smaller version of a VHS. They're deteriorating. They're probably the thing that's deteriorating the most, the fastest. And for some, because some people say, well, I should play them all on my VCR before I pay money to get them digitized. And I would say no, because if it breaks, you're very likely that it's more likely to break. And then you are going to be paying a lot to get it fixed, to find out nothing's on it. Most places that do professional scanning have a minimum charge if the tape's blank. Like you don't pay what they would to convert a whole 8-hour tape. So this is again where I would suggest, and definitely if I had old 16 millimeter and 8 millimeter film reels, I'd be getting a professional to do them, unless you want to do this as a business. Because the other thing to keep in mind is if you buy any of this equipment, what do you do with it after you're done? Then you just have something more clutter in your house in the form of a bunch of scanners, like the table I showed you pictures of earlier. Last but not least, well, not quite last, we have to talk about professionals in a minute, but for memorabilia, you can do it with your phone. I moved that up to good category because if you're taking a photo as opposed to trying to scan something, using a camera to photograph stuff, you can get, I think there's some, it's called shot boxes, a trade name, I think, but you can get light boxes so that your camera or your phone are mounted on something, and then you put the objects in and there's lighting. Lighting is really good to take photos of 3D memorabilia. I'm talking about like 3D stuff. If it's paper, like certificates, you're going to just use it like a scanner. Newspapers, you could do with a phone. I'm probably not going to get a great result because newspapers are so big. Better choice would be an oversized flatbed. Best choice would be a camera because, again, you can get a better picture with that. I've been looking, there's a thing called newspapers.com online that has been digitizing all sorts of old newspapers. And I've been hunting up copies of newspaper articles where I have the original and just downloading that as my digital version because somebody else has already scanned it and the quality's better. And newspapers are hard to scan because on a flatbed, you have to use something dark as a background, or else the light shines through and you see the printing on the other side. So it's another thing that I would do with the camera or something, or let's see if you can find it online first. Okay, here we go. How to choose a professional. And I listed the ones I've listed based on personal knowledge, and also I put a couple references in the last slide of the best scanning places. And so Ever-Present I'm familiar with. Digify I've not used, but I know a lot of other photo managers have used it and been pleased. I use Forever, and full disclosure, I'm an affiliate with Forever, and that's why, but I became an affiliate because I did a lot of research into the quality, and that's who's doing all my stuff. So tips for picking a professional: don't pick based on price only. It's tempting and go, well, why does Kathy charge $1 a negative and this place only charges 10 cents? And it's probably because I'm cleaning my equipment. I'm not touching your negatives with my sweaty fingers, and I'm handling them properly. I'm making sure they're clean before I scan them, versus I'm running them through a great big, I have like somebody sitting in the back that's being paid minimum wage firing your negatives through a machine. So also check into what size and types of originals that can be scanned to make sure that they can actually scan the formats you have, particularly with negatives, because there's all those odd shaped negatives. What image enhancements do they offer? Do they offer color correction, photo rotation? Do they offer organization or anything? What format are the scans returned in? We talked about formats before. That would be important to know what format they're scanning and if you have a choice. Where do they do the scanning? Do they scan in-house or do they outsource? And where are they outsourcing to? There are some companies that, I know Ever-Present, that's a picture from Ever-Present's website there at the bottom. That's their scanning area. They scan in their business in the United States. So does Forever. Digify, I believe they do as well. There's other services that are contracted overseas, and so then you don't know really what you might be getting. And just scrolling through my notes. But basically they should state where they're scanned and how they share them. The article I was looking at where this tip came from, there's a few services that claim to be Australia-based, but they ship your media to India for scanning to save on labor costs. So check terms and conditions, and the risks of services that outsource are lower quality scans, risk of loss, lack of confidentiality. How are the originals sent and returned? And I'll speak to the one that I know. You want to make sure that they're tracking from the moment they send you the container to put your stuff in, to you sending it back to them, it being digitized, and then the originals being returned to you. So Forever tracks it. They have a barcoded tracking system. So I can track from when they receive the box. It goes by FedEx, so I can track my parcel with FedEx. Forever gets the box. They notify me that I can see where it is in the processing. They tell me when the scans are uploaded to my account, and the box of my stuff is sent back via FedEx again, and it's insured. You could get extra insurance. I'm sort of like, if my pictures get lost, if all my negatives are lost, no amount of insurance is really going to make me feel better. But they haven't, as far as we know, they haven't lost anything yet. There are some other companies that have lost a bunch of stuff. And my recommendation is, when you're picking a company, you look at their Google reviews, you look at Better Business, and you look at Trustpilot. Those are just a few things where I would check to see what people are saying about it. And there's some that have actually lost people's photos, which would be very sad. And how do you contact them? What methods of contact are offered? Like, are you contacting them by email? Do you have a support person to contact? Or are you just kind of out of luck if you have a problem? So being conscious of time. So that's if you want to hire a professional. If you want to find somebody local, you can look at Google it online. Also, I will recommend, as I was a member of the association for 15 years now, the photo managers, because these are people who specialize. You can go to the photo manager website, put in your area, and you'll get people with what they offer. But ask them all these questions. Even ask them for a sample of their work. Like, you are the client. So how'd we do? It's question time.
Well done. Thank you very much, Kathy. I wanted to start the questions with a question that a point that Anne brought up earlier, this Elgato, and she provided a link in the comments. It's a dongle essentially that connects physically between the ports on your device, the digital ports on your device, and the analog ports on your VHS machine, which is what those ports are in the picture in the Amazon entry. Have you worked with things like that before?
I have not, because I've contracted mine out, but I have heard of Elgato, and I use a lot of, no, I don't use. A lot of photo managers are using Elgato, and I've got Elgato device as well. As I said, I started to do that and decided I didn't need to do everything. And that I wasn't going to do, I was just going to use other photo managers as contract services.
Right. Again, the risk, as you said earlier, the risk there is your own VHS player may be dusty, and your tapes may be fragile to the point that the one play you get is on your own device that killed it.
And the VHS I had was an old, and it wasn't like a high-end one. It was just a plain old one that we bought. And I had only one, and I just thought, you know what, this isn't really going to be professional level service I can offer.
Those mechanical devices. I mean, a VHS tape is a very mechanical device. It takes the artists who've been, managing them to take care of them. Okay, good answer. Thank you.
It's important to know, like that picture I showed of Ever-Present's operation facility. That gives me confidence that they have professionals who know what they're doing by having a lab that they're working in.
As more than really their picture.
Yeah, because you have to also think, and I'm saying this, a lot of professional photo managers work from home, but they're not necessarily the guy down the street who's doing this in his basement for extra money. I can put it that way, or the lady down the street. Like, anybody can offer these services. Professional photo managers have taken all kinds of certification training, constantly updating, like the amount of change that's gone on just since I first talked, 15 years I'm scanning. You want to know that you're dealing with a company that has got trained people doing what you're doing.
Yeah. And they'll be there to pick it up.
If you're contracting out, if you're doing it yourself, then you can do it yourself. So
Linda, Ryan has a great question here. Briefly, can you address how you save the things that you digitize? It's a great question.
Well, we're going to talk about that, I think, next time, about how to organize all the digital stuff. But I think I forgot to mention this. I don't know if I did or not. When I'm scanning, I can set my scanners I can set certain file names in my scanners. My scanners can be have the family name, whatever. and then they just scan everything in order. But I save everything first goes into my scanner, the device, and then I take those files and I don't remove them. I leave them on that computer because that's the original scans. I copy the original scans to the computer that I work on, which is much bigger than the one that runs my scanners. And then that computer's backed up to Backblaze. So those original scans are all continuously backed up with the whole rest of my computer. And then I create another copy on an external hard drive. And then this is, I think, a very important tip that I don't think we've mentioned anywhere. I never work on the originals. Right now I have 3 places, because I'm now when I'm dealing with other people's things, I'm even more paranoid about losing them. So I have an original backup on the scanning computer, the originals on my working computer, and an originals on an external drive. And now I will create on my working computer a copy of all the originals as I start to organize them. So I just basically save the files, and now I'm going through to organize and put everything back together. I think we talked about in organizing, I mentioned those index cards, and I use that method for my scanning. So yeah, Barb just held one up. So I write on everything an index card. I write the dates, and this is Carol had asked the question about what to write on the back of photos with. I write on the index card what the photos behind it are about. I don't actually write on the photos. You can write on the photos. And Carol, we gave you the answer, but this is, it's not going to be easy to see. It's basically a number 2 Stabilo pencil. See, this is why I can't phone scan. See my hand going there? So you can get these. I put a link to where you can get them. Creative Memory sells them. Archival Methods are probably on Amazon, but they're Stabilo. They're a number 2 pencil. So
art stores have them too.
Never, ever write on a photo with a pen. Never, ever, ever. And if somebody already did, you can forgive them and move on. But it dents the photo, ink transfers. Anne's laughing because it's one of the things that makes photo managers crazy is ink on the back of photos. If the photos have been stored in an envelope long enough, it'll transfer onto the other photo, onto the front of the next photo. Like, just do not ever do that. We are happier to have the pen than nothing, but not much. That's in the okay category. So so saving them, yeah. So that's basically how I save them. I'm digitizing my stuff as JPEGs because I look at my collection, and this is not, I've talked about camera scanning. I didn't camera scan my stuff because I figure no matter how much better quality the scan is, or as a TIFFs, because the people with their heads cut off, the heads aren't coming back with camera scanning. I recommend negative scanning because you'll find a larger field than on the print. So I'm scanning my negatives even though it costs more than my prints.
Can I put a plug in for the HEIC file format? So HEIC is the composite or combo or something like that, and it includes the funky Apple stuff, which is the moving pictures, plus the HEIF, which is the real standard. And this HEIF standard is amazing from a quality perspective. It's amazing the way TIFF is amazing, a very, very high quality. When you use TIFF, moving around is hard just because the damn files are 80 meg or something. But a file that might be 80 meg in TIFF might be 8 meg in HEIC. Yeah. And that's incredible. Anne's going to correct me. Something like that.
No, I'm just going to say
it's a huge difference.
It's an Apple product.
The HEIF is not.
You have to convert stuff at the time.
What I want to project is time. Apple was early, yes, but Apple was early with lots of things, and some things die off because they fail. This one is not failing. This one is definitely making inroads going forward, and it's a lossless format, so it's really good to be working with. Only recently, even in the Macintosh world, can I use their photo management product called Preview and save out to HEIF. And so that's it. If you have the opportunity to do that, I would definitely recommend that over JPEG because of the lossiness.
But you can't, as far as my research, there are no scanners that will scan in that format.
Directly
As yet.
into the device, yeah, as opposed to into the
Device.
computer.
You'd have to scan with an Apple device. So then you're back, because like most scanners will not scan in that format.
I think my Epson software running on a Mac, but it's the Epson software itself as connected to my flatbed. I'll check.
Okay, I could be wrong about that.
I could be wrong too.
It's something to check before you do that. So
yeah.
Linda, did that answer your question about saving? We haven't got to the organizing piece yet.
Yes.
That's coming up.
Yes, thank you very much. I'll look forward to the next program on the organizing.
That's the organizing of the Digitize stuff. So
yeah.
Let me put in a plug here for the structure that we're doing for these presentations. So Kathy has been methodically walking through this workflow that you might do for your entire collection, or you might do on a given project, starting from that overall planning of what is the scope of what I'm doing, through these steps of actually doing the scanning, organizing the files, archiving the files, and so on. The series that I've been doing is walking through what I've called the essential elements to what you're doing. My next program next week is on archiving. So I was looking for a little sidebar with Kathy to make sure that I was doing it right. But, I'll be talking about things like archiving and privacy as you look at them in terms of projects that you're doing. So these things start to overlap one another, and I think that's probably a good thing, but I wanted to put that in context. Because whether you're doing that for an individual project or for your entire corpus of work, the fundamentals are the same.
Oh, Mary asked about the Flip Pal. That was a really cool little scanner, which I have still. I didn't show you a picture of it because it was discontinued. So it was about, yeah, that shows it goes a little on my desk. I could grab mine. It was about that big. And you could scan a bunch, you could take a big picture like a scrapbook album, and you would position the scanner on it to get the whole page, and then it had stitching software to stitch it together. I do not know about a replacement for that, for the Flip Pal, but I still use the stitching software with my other scanners when I have to, like my other flatbed, my A3, when I scan something that's huge. I have scanned 5 foot long panoramic photos, I guess you call them, 5 feet long, 1 foot wide. And I stitched them back together, because you need a drum scanner for something that big. And since these were pictures from the 1908 time, I wasn't going to put them through a drum scanner. So I still use that, but I have not come across anything, Mary, that was like a Flip Pal. And I do all my scanning in 600 DPI. I do mine all at 600 DPI of my photos that I'm scanning.
To my earlier point of when in doubt, just Google it. I did just Google stitching software for cameras, for whatever, and it turns out our good friends at GoPro, because so many people are out there with GoPros and things like that, there are actually, beyond Adobe, there are a number of tools out there that can work specifically for pulling separate scans, separate images together.
Mm-hmm.
That's a hard problem.
Yeah. I'm catching up on the chat because I didn't see it all there. So,
are there other questions?
Yeah. Any other questions? Anne.
Kathy, can you clear up for me, if you scan a whole page in, say, an album that's got a set of photos on, if you say get 600 PPI for the whole page, if it then just electronically separates the individual photos out, you don't get the full 600 DPI on each of the photos. You only get a lower resolution. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
If you do it that way, and don't like separately scan. But I haven't noticed it to be a significant difference.
Right. Okay.
And again, it depends on what you're going to do with it. Sure. And so my uses were, in the cases where I've done that with people's albums, is to create a digital book from the album. And so the resolution, because if we're starting at 600 DPI, and you could scan those as TIFFs as well. and your loss of resolution wouldn't be as noticeable. But
Right.
for
Okay.
things that are being viewed on the screen, I've never noticed a big difference.
Well, you
Even
those
things that are being put into a digital book. Again, it's if you're going to make things bigger, that's when it becomes a problem.
I know you mentioned PhotoMine, and I've looked at their website, and they say about doing whole pages. And that was when I was concerned about people thinking that they're getting the full resolution on
Yeah.
individual pictures if they don't tighten in on the picture.
Yeah, and that is a concern I have with phone app scanning,
Yeah, sure.
because
Thank
you're
I
you.
not
think
starting off at the same level. And PhotoMine is good, like it's okay. It's not camera scanning. And that's where a lot of people say, oh, well, yeah, I'm camera scanning with my phone. It's like, no, you're not. You're scanning with your phone. There's a very big difference between scanning with a DSLR camera with however many megapixels in it and than with your phone. Because it's the quality of the sensor in the cameras. But again, it's if all you can do is use your phone, get a stand so they're not shaky, and use your phone. And there's PhotoMine. Somebody mentioned Reimagine. I think that's what MyHeritage has just come out with. I've been using, believe it or not, the first one for years now before either of those even came out. Been using, I think it's called PhotoScan by Google, which is what I've used when I've scanned stuff with my phone, because there's weird things too that won't show up. They probably would with a camera. So I have a bunch of old embossed banquet flyer, like invites to graduations. And for the flatbed didn't pick up the embossing. It just looked funny. It didn't even like make an outline. So I used my phone so that we could see what it actually looked like. So it's, again, a lot is, what are you doing? What are we trying to get a good, clean digital copy of?
maybe we can take that point to wrap it up, because I think it comes back to the original point of an individual looking at this in terms of a project or looking at it in terms of your entire collection. Because if it comes, the DPI, the fundamental DPI question affects how much money you spend, how much time you spend, and storage you spend on each individual scan. But it still comes down to, are you looking at, if all you want to do is X, is that all you will ever want to do with the scan? Because the scanning is a time-consuming, expensive step. So if you're going to do that, maybe now you only want to do this X, but later you might want to use it for other things, then still go for the higher level. The human eyeball has a limited resolution. And I think Mary made a very good point. That's true. But if you're going to take this image and blow it up, for example, a little brownie photo, and you're going to blow it up to be a poster, well, then you really, 600 DPI might not even be enough. But you know what? It was a brownie photo. So optically, the resolution just wasn't really even there in the first place. So
you can look at what you're
mushy anyway. That's right.
And I use that point of my where we've had a habit with our little old Kodak Instamatics, cutting parts off people, or when you took a picture and the person, before you learned that if you were taking a picture with a building in the back, you kept the person really close to you and the building in the back, instead of sending the person to go stand 100 yards away in front of the building. There's not a lot of hope for that, because if you blow it up enough to see the person, you aren't going to see the building. So it's sort of like, what are you working with here? So if you're working with, like I've had clients that are professional photographers, I probably deal with their stuff differently than the average family one.
So we have some more questions to continue, and we are absolutely open to continue doing that. But I am going to go ahead and end the recording so we can have a disciplined hour-long recording. And thank you all for that. Always remember, these recordings are in the archive. So let me just end the recording.